Well, I wrote this song because it's been real good for me ever since I started on your show, and you said one time.
Ladies and gentlemen, in a world of flashing lights, sequined dresses, and roaring applause, one name has stood above all: Dolly Parton. The sweetheart of Tennessee, the voice of 1,000 memories, and the symbol of resilience draped in rhinestones. She was country's brightest flame, and for decades she lit up the Grand Ole Opry stage like no other. Until one night, she vanished. No announcement, no farewell, just silence. For 10 years, Dolly Parton refused to return to the stage that helped shape her legacy, a place she once called home, a place she had dreamed of since childhood. For a decade, the Opry lights shone without her, and no one dared to ask why. Whispers rippled through Nashville. Was it betrayal? A feud? A moment so painful she could never bring herself to speak of it? Tonight, for the first time, we revisit that silence. The night everything changed backstage. The reason Dolly walked away, and the aching truth she carried quietly through the years. This is not just a story about music. This is about wounds that fame couldn't heal, and the moment she finally faced them. To speak of Dolly Parton is to speak of an era, a voice that rose from the Smoky Mountains and soared into every heart across America. She was born in a one-room cabin in Locust Ridge, Tennessee, fourth of 12 children, raised on faith, hardship, and hymns. Her family had no money, but what they did have was music, and a little girl who would one day turn pain into poetry. From the moment Dolly stepped onto the stage of the Cass Walker Show at age 10, the world glimpsed something rare. A child whose voice could shatter sorrow and stitch hearts. By 13, she'd made her first appearance at the Grand Ole Opry, introduced by none other than Johnny Cash himself. She sang with a twang soaked in truth, and when she smiled, it was as if all of East Tennessee beamed with her. But Dolly Parton was not merely a prodigy. She was a storm dressed in lace. By the late 1960s, she became a fixture on the Porter Wagoner Show. Their musical partnership was electric, and audiences adored her. But as her solo career bloomed in the 70s, she stepped into an entirely new role: trailblazer. She crossed genres, climbing charts not just in country, but pop as well. Jolene, 9 to 5, and I Will Always Love You became anthems that spanned generations. Her fame was dazzling. She built Dollywood, starred in films, and wrote over 3,000 songs. She was witty, generous, self-deprecating, and wise. Behind the wigs and one-liners was a woman sharper than any of her critics realized. And yet, despite the Hollywood offers and chart-topping success, Dolly never truly left Nashville, never left country, never left the Opry. The Grand Ole Opry wasn't just a stage to her. It was a sanctuary, a symbol of dreams realized. She had walked its hallowed boards with Patsy Cline, Minnie Pearl, and Loretta Lynn. It was there she became not just an artist, but an institution. And that's what made her disappearance so haunting. For Dolly Parton to step away from the Opry without a word, it wasn't just absence, it was erasure, a silence too deep for even her fans to fill. And for 10 long years, that silence lingered like a ghost in the wings. Tonight, we pull back that curtain. Because to understand what kept Dolly Parton away, you first have to understand how much she loved that place. It was the summer of 1997 when something unexpected happened behind the heavy velvet curtains of the Grand Ole Opry, something that left a scar Dolly Parton never fully spoke of. That night, the Opry House was sold out. Dolly was scheduled for a rare surprise appearance. Word had quietly spread, and anticipation buzzed like electricity through the audience. She arrived not in glitter or glamour, but in soft blue, with only her guitar in hand. The plan, according to insiders, was simple. 2 songs, one classic, one new. A song that no one had ever heard before. The first was expected, Coat of Many Colors, a tribute to her mother and her past. It brought tears to the crowd, but the second was something different entirely. It was a ballad that, according to whispers, touched on the weight of judgment, especially judgment she'd felt as a woman, as a performer, and some say as someone long accused of not being country enough. As the story goes, just moments before she was to sing it, a member of the Opry's production team approached her backstage. He had been with the institution for years, known for his devotion to its traditions. What happened in that conversation has never been officially confirmed. But according to one sound technician present that night, voices were raised, and then Dolly left. She didn't storm out, she didn't yell. She simply handed her guitar to her assistant and walked quietly toward the back exit, bypassing the press, the crowd, and the rest of her performance. She disappeared into the Nashville night.
The Opry made no official statement. The night was brushed aside. Another performer was hurried onto the stage. The audience never knew they had missed something historic. But Dolly never came back. For 10 years, she declined every invitation. She turned down anniversary tributes, special appearances, and even performances meant to honor her own contributions to country music. In interviews, she always remained gracious, but there was a pause, a glance away, a gentle deflection when the Opry was mentioned. "I still love the Opry," she once said softly on Larry King Live in 2002. "It's in my bones, but some things just need time." The country music community was baffled. Some chalked it up to schedule conflicts. Others insisted it was creative differences. But those closest to Dolly knew better. A friend from her early days at the Opry once told a Nashville paper anonymously, "Something hurt her that night, deeply. And it wasn't just about a song. It was about who got to decide what country really means and who gets to speak their truth." Over the years, the story faded into rumor. The Opry never spoke of it, neither did Dolly. But fans noticed. They noticed the silence. They noticed the pain beneath the sparkle whenever the subject came close. And they waited for a return, for a word, for a sign. What they didn't know was that Dolly herself was waiting too, waiting to make peace with a wound she never expected, from a place she never thought would cause it. As the years passed, Dolly Parton's absence from the Grand Ole Opry grew louder than applause. At first, industry insiders whispered about creative disagreements, while fans speculated everything from political tension to backroom betrayal. But beneath the gossip lay something far more personal, something that never made headlines. In private circles, it was understood. Dolly had been told, subtly or otherwise, that her voice, her truth, was too much. Not her singing voice, but her growing desire to speak about women's roles, about artistic independence, and about pushing boundaries in a place that prized tradition above all else. That night in 1997 was not about a single song. It was about what that song represented. It was Dolly's quiet protest, a message from an artist who had been sweet, smiling, and accommodating for most of her life, now ready to say something raw. And someone in power didn't want her to. Years later, in a conversation not widely circulated, Dolly told a friend, "They loved the showgirl in me, the hair, the laughs, the glitter, but when I tried to sing something from the gut, really from the gut, they got nervous." She wasn't angry. That was never Dolly's way. But she was hurt. For a woman who had fought her way from nothing, who had battled dismissive critics, industry sexism, and the constant scrutiny of her image, it was perhaps the final straw. To be censored at the place she called home felt like a betrayal from family. Media outlets, for their part, tiptoed around the issue. Journalists knew something had gone wrong, but no one dared to ask directly. Country music was, and still is, a small world, and the Opry was its Vatican. Questioning it came with consequences. Meanwhile, other performers noticed the void. Every time the curtain went up and Dolly wasn't there, one longtime Opry singer told Country Weekly, it was like someone had turned off the porch light. Fans flooded forums with theories. Was it politics? Was it Porter Wagoner's ghost still lingering? Was it personal grief? But the truth, like many of Dolly's lyrics, was simple and sorrowful. She no longer felt welcome. And yet, she kept quiet. She performed across the world, recorded some of her best work in those years, and never once spoke negatively about the Opry in public. That silence was, in itself, an act of grace and defiance. But behind closed doors, those close to her say the Opry was still a wound. "She didn't cry about it," said one of her backup singers, "but sometimes, when we'd drive past that exit on the highway, she'd get real quiet." 10 years passed. Then, in the fall of 2007, a shift occurred. A new management team took over at the Opry. Some old guard voices had retired. A letter was sent, not publicized, not framed in gold, just a personal note. And though its content remains private, it was described by one source as the kind of letter that finally said, "We're sorry." Still, no one expected what came next. Because when Dolly Parton finally returned, she did it on her terms, and she did it without warning. It was October 2008 when the unexpected happened. No posters, no promo, just a ripple through the audience minutes before curtain call. "She's here." And just like that, after a decade of silence, Dolly Parton returned to the Grand Ole Opry stage.
The room was electric, breathless. Some wept before she even said a word. And when she finally walked into the spotlight, wearing a simple dress, no glitter, no spectacle, there was a stillness so pure you could hear the hum of the stage lights. She opened with precious memories. The audience stood, not because they were told, but because their hearts did. She didn't mention the absence, she didn't name names, but halfway through her second song, Coat of Many Colors, her voice cracked, just for a moment. She pressed her hand to her chest, smiled through the emotion, and kept singing. When the music ended, she stepped to the microphone and spoke plainly. "I've stood on a lot of stages in my life," she said, her voice soft.
but this one raised me. It broke me too, once. But the thing about family is, you find your way back. Somehow you do. There was no drama, no apologies demanded. Just that, an honest acknowledgement that even places we love most can hurt us, and still we come home. Backstage, an opera veteran embraced her. "You never left us, you know," he whispered. "We just didn't know how to say we missed you." She nodded, tears in her eyes, and said, "I missed me too." That night, Dolly Parton didn't just reclaim a stage. She reclaimed a part of herself that had gone silent, and the Opry, in its quiet way, let her. It was not a triumphant return with fanfare and flashing lights. It was a moment of grace, of healing, a moment only she could have created, simply by showing up and singing what mattered most. And so, the circle remained unbroken. How do we measure the weight of silence? Is it in the years lost, the songs never sung, or in the quiet ache that follows us down familiar hallways, like the one Dolly must have felt each time her name wasn't called on the Opry stage? Forgiveness is a tender, fragile thing. It does not arrive in grand gestures. It slips in softly, often when no one's looking. And when Dolly Parton returned to the Opry, she didn't demand answers. She didn't reopen the wound. She simply brought with her a heart that had already done the hardest work, healing itself. But I ask you, dear viewers, if it were you, if the very place that raised you also rejected you, would you find your way back? Is loyalty still sacred when trust has been shaken? And in a world where artists are often celebrated only when they stay quiet, what does it take for one woman to reclaim her voice without ever raising it? Dolly's return wasn't just a moment in country music history. It was a reminder that sometimes strength isn't in the spotlight, it's in the shadow you choose to step out of. Ladies and gentlemen, behind the rhinestones and the curtain calls lies a story that may never be fully told. But tonight, we've come a little closer to it. And perhaps that's enough. Thank you for listening.